Hello, welcome back. Today I'm doing an oral presentation for my summer class, and we're talking about the novel Palm Wine Drinkard. I know, not drunkard, but drinkard. I looked it up. There isn't an actual difference between the two words. I think it's just kind of a tense thing. But we're going to be talking about this story. Don't mind me if I'm looking right here. I'm just looking at my computer screen. We're going to be talking about how character development negates the single story. And the single story is a concept that we've been working with in this class. It's about how the West kind of mystifies the East in either like a strange, dangerous way or in like an exotic, like interesting way, if that makes sense. This was actually the first African novel published in English. It was published in 1952. And the English reception for this book was that it was like a simple book. The English wasn't quite delicate or beautiful, and it wasn't really what we expected a novel to be. I mean, even as an English speaker right now, reading it, I could not tell what was going to happen. And that was both the best part of the book and the worst part of the book. Every time I started a new scene, I could not figure out what was going to happen. It was a very difficult and beautiful read. And the African reception was that they thought that this novel would promote stereotypes against Africans. Like, it would promote the idea that they were a primitive sort of culture, which at the time that might have done so, but now looking back, I think it's a beautiful piece of work. Which is funny enough, the narrator is not given a name except for the name he gives himself, which is Father of gods who could do anything. Which is very interesting because he starts off, at least from my point of view, definitely not a god. He's a privileged kid who is so invested in drinking palm wine that his father gives him his own tapster, which essentially is just a man who climbs palm trees, taps them for the palm wine, and then brings them down to drink. And I did a little bit of research on palm wine. It's actually a drink that you really should drink only within like 2 hours of it fermenting, and it naturally starts to ferment as soon as you tap it. So this is a man who has to be like employed at all times to supply palm wine at any moment, right? And then the father of gods who could do anything, I will simply refer to him as the narrator because that is too many words to say. The narrator is only motivated through the loss of his tapster, and he goes on this great adventure of reaching Dead's Town to find his tapster. And because this is just a summary, it is going to be spoilers. He does find the tapster in Dead's Town, but because the tapster has been dead so long and like fully integrated into like the culture of the dead, he can't go back. An example in the book is that now the tapster walks backwards and everybody in Dead's Town walks backwards. It's just kind of a strange thing. So he's saying he can't return to the land of the living simply because he wouldn't be able to walk correctly. But because this tapster can't go with him, he's kind enough. He gives him an egg that grants wishes. And the narrator brings that back, discovers there's a famine in his hometown, which his adventures took him 10 years, finds out there's a famine in his hometown, and uses the wish-granting egg to supply everybody with food. There are really interesting themes of fatherhood and childhood. I think one of the most important things about this book, and it's something that's really easy to overlook, is that the narrator's father dies 6 months before the tapster dies. And it maybe sheds light that he wouldn't go into Dead's Town for his father to retrieve him, but he'd go to Dead's Town to retrieve his tapster. And you'd think this is because he is an alcoholic, which that's most likely to be true. I'm not debating that. But you could say you think he's only motivated by his own self-interests. I say this, the tapster was the only one who really cared for him. As soon as he gets to Dead's Town, the tapster is the one that builds him a house, that brings him food, that brings him palm wine, that asks him how he's doing, that asks him how long he's been on this journey, and sees how much he cares. The narrator goes to his father's house in Dead's Town and finds nobody there. He's not greeted by any of his father's company. His father is nowhere to be around. His father is just plain old out of his life. And this makes you realize, if your son, which, like the narrator, if your son has begun drinking palm wine at 10 years old, and that's the only thing he wants to do, and the only thing you as a father do about it is provide him a way to drink endless amounts of palm wine, how much do you really care for the child? Right? Exactly. And then another note on fatherhood and childhood. The tapster actually does have a son. He gets a wife, which that's a crazy story in itself. He gets a wife because her thumb starts to swell. And then as they're tapping, because partway through the story, he starts tapping his own palm wine. When she's tapping palm wine, she catches her thumb on a thorn, pops it, and then a 10-year-old baby comes out. This story is wild. A 10-year-old baby comes out who just wants to eat incessantly. And he becomes so demanding and so abusive that the narrator just burns him alive. Which I feel like, I don't know if this story means for there to be a literal child, because a lot of the story is very fable and mythological. I think that this story, maybe he's having to face up to the fact that he was a very privileged child who had endless amounts of consumption, and maybe his reaction to his baby was part of that. And the baby's a reoccurring thing. I mean, after the baby gets burnt, his half-burnt body commands he and his wife for a little bit, and then at the very end, there's this creature that's just calling, hungry, 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 and he keeps trying to eat his wife. So it sounds to me like that's probably metaphorical of something, but nevertheless, what exactly the baby means, there are very strong themes of fatherhood and childhood, and they're both very interesting. Oh, and consumption versus service. Another interesting note about the narrator is even when he is at his most privileged and at his most, we can say, spoiled, at the very beginning of the book, when he gets endless amounts of palm wine whenever he wishes, he is still giving it away to his friends who leave him as soon as he doesn't have access to the palm wine anymore. And then as soon as he gets this egg that provides wishes, he comes back to his hometown, there's a famine. He starts wishing that everybody in the world could have food. And because of that, the world starts barging in on his door and abusing him, starts breaking down his house, and to the point where they break the egg. But no matter what he does, he is always trying to give his wealth to other people, whether it be his wealth of palm wine, his wealth of his heroic acts. He uses the magic of juju, and he performs acts of heroism all the time. And as much as he's consuming, he's also providing service. Or the other way around. As much as he's providing service, he's also, don't mind me. He's also consuming. I mean, obviously he's consuming palm wine at every opportunity that he gets, but he's also somebody who dances and relaxes at every opportunity. There are three creatures called drum, song, and dance that are enwrapped and enmeshed in this story at every turn. They're very important people. So it's kind of, it matches the magic and the dance to it as well. So why are there these contradictions, right? I propose that there are these contradictions because Palm Wine Drinkard is less concerned about answers and more concerned about questions. When I started trying to analyze this to prepare for this presentation, it felt as though I was trying to analyze a close friend, because this whole story, it's written in first person, and it's very much like somebody recounting an experience that happened to them. It starts off, I was a boy of a wealthy father. At 10 years old, I started drinking palm wine. Like, the whole thing just feels like a story, an oral tradition that somebody is passing on to you. And so it felt less like I was studying literature, and it felt more like I was listening to a friend. And when you listen to people talk about their lives are full of contradictions. They're full of existential wonder and loneliness and the weight of a childhood of excess and deprecation. This story is very beautiful because he negates the single story just by the contents of this story and how he changes over it. He's always been a complex person, but he changes from a lonely, spoiled, complex person to a person with many connections over his long journey. And he remains a complex person at the very end. And I think that is what's so beautiful about this book, and that's why I chose this book. Anyways, I'm over my time, so have a lovely one.